Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Eisenherz and today I will give you guys my personal recap of cEDH in 2021. I will start by going over the top 20 cards of last year, set by set, or at least I will give you guys my humble opinion on them. Then we'll talk about last year's bannings and unbannings, and I will also give you guys my 2 cents about banning in EDH in general. I will then reflect on how the meta has shifted in the last year, and finally I'll also have a look at the release schedule for 2022 and what to expect this year. So as always, you can find timestamps in the description box below, and without further ado, let's get started. Okay, yeah, well, that's my beautiful face, and let's get started with Kaldheim. So my favorite cards of Kaldheim were Valky, God of Lies, but it's not Valky himself. Kind of interesting creature, can copy other creatures, steal their effects. But what I really liked was the backside, Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter. Quite an expensive card, like with 7 mana, 5 loyalty. But it also gives you an emblem when it enters the battlefield, which allows you to cast cards that it has exiled. And I've seen a few decks with Tybalt as the commander, and I really like the card. I really like the concept. I like having unusual commanders. Tybalt being a Planeswalker as a commander, it's really interesting to me. I've seen this deck storm off like crazy, bury the opponent's card advantage. The biggest drawback, of course, is that it's 7 mana and a non-creature spell, so it's very easy to interact with, and then it can also easily get removed by combat, and especially in this meta that has so many hate bears and so many creature-based decks that can just swing to get rid of Tybalt. It's really hard to pull this off, but I've seen people play it, and I've really liked the concept. I really like the deck, and I wish to see more of this kind of commander. And yeah, let's go to the next card, which is Birgi, God of Storytelling. Of course, Birgi I play myself in my Roger Tevesh deck. It's an incredibly nice Storm Enabler, giving you a red mana for every spell you cast, which kind of makes one CMC spell's mana neutral, allows you to really storm off. Really nice in manual storm lists. The double boasting is hardly relevant. I've never seen anyone actually use it. But yeah, giving you mana that doesn't empty from your mana pool until the end of the turn, that's incredible. Also, 3 mana, 3/3, that's never a bad thing. The backside, Harnfell, it's also a pretty good card. Like 5 mana is expensive, of course, but it's a free discard outlet. And then it also allows you to play exiled cards. And this, in combination with any wheel, like let's say Wheel of Fortune, allows you to really bury your opponents in card advantage. So that's actually really nice. Of course, it gets stopped by stuff like Drenith Magistrate, but it's a decent backside to have on a card that's already as good as Birgi. So I really like this card, and that's also the only 2 cards I actually really liked from Kaldheim. So let's go on to the next set, which is Strixhaven. So the first card we have from Strixhaven is Wandering Archaic. I play this card myself. 5 mana, 4/4, not the best stats, but what it does is really good. So whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2 colorless, and if they don't, you may copy that spell. This is really good in Urza. Of course, in Urza Power Scepter, not in the polymorph version. But as the deck has a mana denial sub-theme, it's really hard for opponents to pay the mana to not have us copy their spells. And as I'm building the UPS version of Urza to be a little bit more grindy than the polymorph version, this was just a perfect addition to the list. So we stack our opponents, get the Wandering Archaic out whenever we can, and this allows us to actually really bury our opponents in card advantage. So whenever they do something, we usually get to do the same thing as well. It doubles counter spells, it doubles tutors for us, which is really relevant. Overall, an incredibly nice card. It does have a backside to it, and I really don't know what it is. I don't care. It's like some kind of really bad wheel, and it's not relevant, and I've never actually seen anyone play the backside of this card, so I'm not going to show it. Let's go on. So we have a Resculpt, another addition for Urza, another upgrade for Urza, in both Poly and UPS. It's a 2-mana instant that exiles an artifact or creature. This is really relevant, not because of the exile effect, but because you can target artifacts. So we did not have artifact removal in Mono Blue, hard artifact removal. And this is super relevant because it can get rid of Curse Totem or what's the other one? Null Rod. So this is really good to have. We immediately added it to Urza by cutting Pongify or Rapid Hybridization, one of the other creature removal spells. And the fact that it gives our opponent a 4/4 red and blue elemental creature token is also not that relevant for us, because first we have a construct that's a good blocker, and then secondly the main target for combat damage is usually the Turbonaus player, so it's actually a good thing that we give our opponents another creature to pressure our Turbonaus opponent, which there's usually at least one of in any pot. Yeah, and we also have Culling Ritual, of course, as the next card. This has quickly become a cEDH staple. 4 mana board wipe, and you guys know that cEDH has very low mana curve. A lot of permanents that are 1 or 2 CMC or 0 CMC, so this usually wipes the board clean and gives the controller enough mana to cast something like a Peer into the Abyss or a Ad Nauseam with enough mana to spare to storm off and win the game from there. This card is extremely good against Urza. I really hate to see it, but it is what it is, and yeah, you have to find a way to deal with it. Incredibly good, incredibly strong card. I do not currently have a deck in which I can play this, but I'm planning on building an Epson deck once a commander is released. That's interesting to me. So yeah, Culling Ritual, another really good card from Strixhaven. And then we have Cody, of course. Okay, Cody is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of degenerate Turbonaus decks. I've played against Cody a bunch of times. You can't underestimate this card. Like, it threatens a win turn 2 every game, so you have to find a way to deal with it. Yeah, the fact that it can basically turn 4 mana into an Adnos, into a win on turn 2 is just crazy. It's really so consistent, and the cards you play are so weird to make it work, but it just works, and it's not fun to play with, it's not fun to play against, but it's the epitome, I don't know if that's the correct English word, of Turbonaus. That's like what Turbonaus was, the pinnacle of what Turbonaus can be. This screams cEDH, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of it, of course. I don't like this, but I like to see what people are able to do with it. And yeah, what kind of like calms me down a little bit is that I don't think Turbonaus can become any more inbred, degenerate than Cody lists. It's the perfect list to play when you're in a tournament setting. So if I was ever going to play in a real life tournament here in Germany, I would probably build a Cody deck, because like it's tournament, you want to win, right? So just build Cody or Blue Farm. I think, is there anything else we have here? No, so let's continue to the next set, which is Modern Horizons 2. And there we have Esper Sentinel. I remember when this card was spoiled, I was like kind of not sold on it immediately, because I was like, how do you say it? spoiled by cards like a Rhystic Study or a Mystic Remora, but of course I was completely wrong. It's an incredible draw engine. It's a 1 CMC creature that usually drops turn 1, turn 2, and draws you so many cards during the duration of the game. So, of course, I realized my mistake and immediately added this card to my Omnath list, and it will be a staple in cEDH, no doubt. So, if you play white in any list, you will have to play Esper Sentinel, period. It's just as, well, maybe not as good, but it's as it's in the same realm of Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study. Incredible card advantage engine, especially if you can pump this creature, like if you play Marath or Kenrith. This is incredible because you can just make it bigger, so it's harder for your opponents to spend the mana or pay the mana to not have you draw cards every turn. And yeah, just an incredibly good card. So let's go to the next one, which is Dam. Yeah, I don't play any lists at the moment that allow me to play Dam, so I don't have a Orzhov plus X deck. But this is an incredible board removal. It kind of reminds me, of course, because of the overload of Cyclonic Rift. But it's really nice to be able to destroy just any creature. It can't be regenerated, and then you can just also overload it. So I remember Wrath of God being one of the strongest cards in MTG ever. And now we have stuff like Dam, which is Wrath of God, but even better because you can cast it for 2 black if you want to just spot remove any creature. And this shows you how good non-standard legal sets actually are. So of course this from Modern Horizon. It's made for Modern, not for Standard, so of course the cards that are being printed, designed are much stronger than in other regular Standard releases. Let's go to the next card. We have Dalthi Voidwalker, another new cEDH staple. I don't actually play it in my Roger Tevesh build because I think it's too slow and more like of a disruptive card, and I want my Roger Tevesh build to be really proactive, not disruptive in any way. But of course, Dalthi Walker is an incredible card and hates on so many graveyard reliant strategies that it's actually a must in most decks that play black. And it also is hard to block. So if you play Tymna, you should play Dalthi Walker because you will also draw a card every turn, and your opponents have to be really careful on what they cast. As long as Dalthi is in play, you can pretty much copy any tutor, you can copy any payoff spell like Admouse. So just an incredible card, and again shows you how busted non-standard legal sets can be. And then we have Dragon's Rage Channeler, Darcy. I play this card in both my Roger Tevesh list and my Omnath list. It's really nice, and it's become a staple in Modern, but also in cEDH, because you can effectively fuel your graveyard and filter cards from the top of your library, which is really nice, especially when you play Breach. So the biggest issue you can have with Breach sometimes is that you don't have enough cards to fuel your combo or to storm off, especially when you play manual storm list like I do. And Dragon's Rage Channeler just makes it so much easier. So just an incredible card in both lists I play and in general. Most red decks I know are on this card. It's also really efficient, like 1 mana 1/1 that becomes a 3/3 with flying. Super good card. So let's see what's next. Next card is the Monkey, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer. Yeah, this card was called the best dork to ever be printed. I kind of disagree. It's an incredibly busted card, like incredibly pushed. 1 mana 2/1 is already really good. Then it also has Dash, which is sometimes relevant to disrupt top deck tutors. But the fact that you can create treasures to color fix and exile the top card of an opponent's library is really good. The only drawback, of course, that this card has and has to have is the fact that you have to deal combat damage to an opponent. And cEDH used to be a format where dealing combat damage was never a problem, but right now it isn't. So most people usually have 1 or 2 blockers, and I've actually seen people block my Ragavan with their dog just to get rid of the Ragavan because it was disrupting everybody and making me mana, and they didn't want me to have that. So they just took the bullet and blocked Ragavan with a 1/1 dork. And then also another issue there is with Ragavan is that when you draw it late game, it's kind of becomes a dead card because you can't deal combat damage to an opponent at that point. Unlike with dorks, if you draw them late game, they're still producing mana, so that's really good. Still, Ragavan incredibly busted. 1 mana, 2/1 that steals cards and creates treasures. Crazy good card. And yeah, actually sees plays in most decks that have access to red. And then we have Endurance. Endurance is another really busted card. So 3 mana, 3/4 is already really good. So then you add Flash to it, becomes even better. Then you also add Reach to it, becomes much more better. Much more better, is that even a term? I don't know. Then you can also evoke it by exiling a green card. So you now have a creature that can be cast like a Force of Will could be cast. But the best thing about Endurance is the ETB trigger. It puts all the cards of an opponent's graveyard on the bottom of their library in a random order, which means you can, well, not of an opponent's, but of target player's graveyard into on the bottom of their library. So what does that do? First of all, it's graveyard disruption for breach-centered decks. But what it also allows you to do is perform Twister loops. So you can put your graveyard back into your library, redraw your deck, and then start a loop all over again, which is really good. I've seen people play Endurance in Twister loops. I've seen people disrupt Underworld Breach lines with this. Incredibly busted card. It's a staple in Modern now, but it's will also be a staple in cEDH, especially in green-centered decks. So I don't think any green deck does not want to play this card because it's really pushed. Next thing we have is Ignoble Hierarch. Another really good mana dork, like Noble Hierarch, same cycle. I wish to see more of this cycle, so I hope they will print more in the future. 1 mana, 0/1 that adds, what's it called? Junt colors, and has an Exalted trigger. That's really good. And yeah, I just hope that they will print more cards like this in the future. And then we have Grist the Hunger Tide, another really interesting card in my opinion. So when I first saw this, I was thinking about building this actually, but yeah, I didn't for some reason, but I know that other people have. So with Grist, it's funny, you can actually use Grist as a commander, because whenever it's not on the battlefield, it counts as a creature, so you can put it in the command zone. It's actually creatures, and you can cast it. You can tutor it up with any creature tutor, which is really relevant. That's why, for example, Gidrock lists play it, because it's a tutorable removal spell. And yeah, there are interesting concepts like Grist with Hulk, Grist with Razorcat. Another really interesting card, another card I would like to see more of in the future. Yeah, interesting Planeswalkers like this. Also reminds me on the card I mentioned in the beginning here, what's it called? Tibalt. Yeah, more of this please. And the last card we have from Modern Horizons 2 is, of course, Urza's Saga. Probably the best card that was released in the set, next to Esper Sentinel. Not only because of the flavor win for Urza, but it's pretty much a staple in every mid-rangey cEDH list, or in every non-turbo cEDH list. It creates 2 constructs that's really relevant for Urza, actually. It makes beatdown plans much more relevant for Urza. Like, I've actually won a lot of games with beatdown now that I can use Urza Saga to create more constructs. It searches up a 0 or 1 CMC artifact. Well, not CMC, 0 or 1 mana cost. That's relevant. You can't tutor up something like an Arcum's Astrolabe. But yeah, it gets an artifact into play immediately, so it replaces itself, especially when you play Urza. You can get something like a Pithing Needle to disrupt an opponent. You can get a Mana Crypt to have even more mana. Just an incredibly good card. I immediately got one, of course, and yeah, more of this, please. And I think that's it with Modern Horizons 2. Let's go to the next set, which is Innistrad, Midnight Hunt. And there we have Malevolent Hermit and the backside, Benevolent Geist. So the front is 2 mana, 2/1 Dispel effect. Little bit, not Dispel, sorry, Spell Pierce effect. But instead of paying 2, your opponent will have to pay 3. It's okay. Front side is okay. It's kind of slow sometimes. So if you have another way to put this creature into your graveyard, that's even better. But it's nice to have on the field, especially because your opponents don't want to run into this counterspell because they know it's there. Kind of makes them more cautious. But if you can get your Malevolent Hermit into the graveyard with something like a wheel effect, you will be able to cast a Benevolent Geist for only 3 mana. And this card has won me games, actually. So in Urza Power Scepter, it's probably the closest thing you can have to a, what's it called? What's the other one, the white one called? That doesn't allow your opponents to cast spells during your turn. Whatever. Next best thing to it, Grand Abolisher. Okay. Next best thing to Grand Abolisher. Your non-creature spells can't be countered. Of course, Benevolent Geist can be removed, which sucks, but your opponents will have to have removal and also have to have interaction for your spells. And then also they won't be able to interact with your interaction, which is really good. And yeah, it has won me games, and it's a staple in cEDH now. Most blue decks play it. Well, I think all blue decks that aren't on Polymorph actually play this now, if they don't have access to Silence or Grand Abolisher. Okay, and then the next card we have is Old Stick Fingers. I really like the concept of this creature, and I would like to see more of this. A very interesting commander that has X in its mana cost. It pretty much just milks your library until you hit the creatures you need to pull off a combo. I have a friend who plays it. It's really interesting. The only thing that's weird about it is that you can't use Mana Dorks in a green deck. So that's kind of weird. Well, you can use Mana Dorks, of course, but most cEDH lists don't, because they want to put like 2 or 3 creatures into the graveyard, cast Old Stick Fingers for 5 mana, put 2 or 3 creatures in the graveyard, and then combo off from there with any reanimation effect. I've played against it, I've won against it, but I've also lost against this deck. And it's another one of those just incredibly interesting and unique commanders I would like to see more of in the future. Not necessarily just a card advantage engine, not necessarily just whatever, something disruptive or a combo piece, but this is like a really interesting enabler. Yeah, more of these kinds of spells in the future, please. And I think that's it for Midnight Hunt. Well, at least in my opinion, that's it for Midnight Hunt. And then we come to Innistrad, Crimson Vow. And there we have something that's an incredible upgrade for Urza. We have the Hullbreak Horror. I remember when this card was spoiled online, we just went crazy. We just went crazy on the Urza server. 7 mana, 7/8, really good stats. Flash, really good. Can't be countered, even better. So you can cast this in your last opponent's end step like a Cyclonic Rift, and nobody can do shit about it. And then it has 2 triggers. So whenever you cast a spell, you can either return another spell you don't control to its owner's hand. So that's basically an unsubstantiated effect. And then the other effect is you can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So this creature replaces Tidespell Tyrant in Urza Poly builds. Why does it replace it, not add on? Whenever you polymorph or use Proteus Staff, you want to 100% all the time flip into Hullbreaker Horror because it's just so much better than Tidespell Tyrant. The fact that it's not flying and the fact that it can't bounce lands is not relevant at all. When this creature enters the battlefield, it's usually game, and it doesn't matter if your opponents have lands in play because you can just get them hellbent with Urza and have so much stacks, so much interaction that they won't be able to cast anything anyway, whether they have lands or don't. And the other thing that's incredible about Hullbreaker Horror is that it's so good as a card, not just as a combo piece, but as a card in general, that we also play it in Urza Power Scepter as well. We can't use tutors for it, so like Polymorph or Proteus Staff, but we still can play it because it's just so efficient. Cast it in your last opponent's end step. Even if there's a Rule of Law effect in play, you cast it in your last opponent's end step. Can't be countered. Now you cast any spell, bounce the Rule of Law effect, cast another spell, start your loop, win the game. Just an incredible card, and I was really happy to see this, especially after Hullbreacher was banned this year, and yeah, we'll talk about that later. Let's get to the next card, which is Wash Away. Wash Away, 1 CMC counterspell that counters anything that was not cast from its owner's hand. So, well, anything that comes from the graveyard or anything that's cast from the command zone or from exile. So, in Commander, but especially in cEDH, this is really relevant. You can counter something that was cast with Yarkwill or Underworld Breach, or just counter a commander. There are so many commander-reliant decks. I'm talking Winota, I'm talking Godo, I'm talking whatever, that just need their commander in play to get started, to win the game. And with that, you can just counter it for 1 mana. That's incredible. That's so much value in a 1 CMC instant. And that's not even a rare or mythic, it's just an uncommon. Definitely a card you should have on your radar if you have an opponent that has a commander-reliant deck. And what's the next card? Yeah, the final card we have for today is Grolnok, the Omnivore. Another interesting commander. I have a friend who plays it. I've helped with the layout of his primer and talked about the list a bit. I really like Grolnok because it's just a different take on Simic. Mills cards, you can cast cards from exile with it, at least those that have a Crow counter on it. And I've played against this deck, I've won against this deck, but I've lost against this deck. It can be so fast, can get out of hand so quickly, especially if there's a combo that allows my opponent to mill cards indefinitely, like Mesmeric Orb and Basalt Monolith, I think it is, that allows you to mill your whole library. And what I really like is the deck building restrictions. Well, not restrictions, but yeah, well, the core it kind of gives you, because you can only cast permanents from exile with it. It kind of forces you to play more permanents than you would usually take up the slot of an instant or sorcery, like creature tutors or counterspells, just like Malevolent Hermit, so which is a counterspell, but it's on a permanent. So that's kind of interesting in my opinion. And yeah, I was really happy to see Grolnok, probably one of the best commanders that was spoiled this year. And if I'm not mistaken, there are like a dozen or more submissions for Grolnok for the cEDH decklist database, one of which is my friend's. So yeah, I'm really interested to see which list will make the database. And I think that's it with my top 20 cards for this for last year. And yeah, I've definitely missed something, and I couldn't mention everything. So I would like to hear what you think. What's your favorite card, your favorite cards from last year's sets? Just leave a comment and tell me what you think are the best cards from last year's sets. And now let's continue with Bannings and Unbannings in 2021. Yeah, well, first card that was banned this year is Hullbreacher. Man, I was sad about this. Not only because I have a extended art foil in my box, but like this card was crazy in Urza. It was crazy in every deck. But think about this: in Urza, you could not only use the treasures once, you could just use them as rocks, so you had them for multiple turns. You didn't even have to wait to use this together with a wheel. You could just cast it. It would like level the playing field against decks like Timna Thrasios or Blue Farm, which just draw an incredible amount of cards. Yeah, it made opponents really careful when wheeling. So in my opinion, of course, this was incredibly push card, like maybe even slightly too strong. But it was also not printed in a standard league set. It was printed in a commander set, and the fact that they banned it, although it was specifically created for commander, really pissed me off, man. This really got me angry. This just shows that there's a clear miscommunication between Wizards and the rules committee, and they shouldn't, like, either you shouldn't have printed this card at all, or you shouldn't ban it, especially in a commander set. Like, sure, I paid a lot of money to get this card foiled for my Urza list, but fuck it. Like, I don't even care about that. This is just toxic for cEDH players, for EDH players in general. Like, imagine you buy a product specifically made for a format, and then you can just not use it because it's too strong, and it's not even Wizards who ban it, it's the rules committee who bans it. This is just wrong in my opinion. Card is busted, but it shouldn't have been banned, and I will explain later why I think it should not have been banned. And yeah, the next card that was banned this year was Golos Tireless Pilgrim. Another one of those bannings I can't understand. Yes, Golos is strong. It was one of the best 5-color Turbonaut commanders. It could grab Boseiju to cast a uncounterable Adnos or Peer into the Abyss. It's an infinite mana outlet. It's just a good card. It's just a really good card. And I'd probably play it myself if I wasn't against Thassa's Oracle win cons. But the reasoning behind banning it was really weird in my opinion. So first argument they made was, well, it reduces commander tax. Yeah, well, other cards reduce or forego commander tax completely. So we have Yuriko. You don't have to pay commander tax at all. You can just ninjutsu her into play. And then we also have the Derevi. This is pretty much the same thing. You pay 4 mana, put it into play. You can do that whenever you want to, so you don't have to actually pay the command tax. So that, in my opinion, is a really bad argument. And then the fact that casual players would just cast Golos and then pay 7 mana to reveal the top 3 cards of their library and play busted cards over and over again. Well, isn't that what Commander in casual is actually about? Playing huge cards for big mana. So I don't think that paying 7 mana to cast spells from exile is that busted of an ability. You can still counter those spells. You can still disrupt those spells. You can still remove Golos. You can still deactivate Golos with a Pithing Needle or anything else. So this banning just was unnecessary in my opinion. And yeah, I will explain why. So in my opinion, what the rules committee does is like they come at bannings from the wrong angle, in my opinion. So bannings should be, and this is all my humble opinion, and it's kind of controversial, but I think bannings should be minimal as possible. Cards like Hullbreacher, Golos shouldn't be banned. There are, of course, cards that should be banned. There's stuff like Black Lotus and Time Walk and what's the other one? The artifact that allows you to get an extra turn, but it comes into play tap, Time Vault, or whatever it is. And then there's stuff like Yawgmoth, Bargain, which are just way too efficient, or even Grizzlebrand. But these cards are way too efficient, they're way too hard to interact with, and they're also way too expensive. Some of them, of course. These cards, in my opinion, should be banned, but then there are other cards like Golos, like Hullbreacher, that could be rule zeroed. So the rules committee, instead of creating a growing ban list, could create something like a inadvisable list, a list of cards they say or they want you to discuss before the game. So like if you want to play Golos, have a discussion with your pot, talk to them. Yeah, well, guys, I want to play Golos. Are you okay with it? If not, I will pick another deck. Or I want to play Hullbreacher in my whatever list. Are you okay with that? If not, I will replace the card with another card. Why is that relevant? Well, EDH is the format, and especially casual EDH is the format where you want to play big stupid stuff. Well, you want everybody to have fun, but you want to also play big stupid stuff, and then not allowing people to play that big stupid stuff is kind of counterproductive, in my opinion. And yeah, why not make people decide themselves? Why not incentivize? Is that the correct word? I don't know. Why not make people use Rule Zero much more efficiently? Why not have casual players in general talk to each other, communicate about the cards they want to play with, play against, and have a discussion about? Because there is no such thing. Well, some, but most cards aren't busted in and of themselves. They are busted in the correct deck. Yeah, when you can tutor for them, when you specifically tutor for them, when you use them in a special way, like when you use Golos to get Boseiju to cast an uncounterable payoff spell or something like that. That makes the cards really good. But anything can be built in a casual list. And the fact that people were not able to cast a Hullbreacher properly and then didn't have fun for a few turns because like someone would disrupt all their opponent's hands and then have 21 treasures and nothing to do with it. Isn't that something casual players should have a talk about once it happens? So like, dude, come on, that wasn't fun. I don't think we are in the right meta and the right environment to play that card. It's way too disruptive and it's not fun for us. And we don't really want you to play that card if you're not able to use it in a way that stops or ends the game. We're just sitting here for 5, 6, 7 turns not doing anything. That's not fun. That's not why we are sitting here on at the table. So let's have this discussion with each other. And I mean, MTG is so big. There are so many cards. There are so many cards you can choose from. And if you notice that a card is not working for you, not working in your pot, then replace it. Talk about it. Yeah, communicate about it. And not just ban it. Yeah, I was really unhappy with the Hullbreacher ban, and I was also kind of irritated by the Golos ban because this card was played for the last 2 years or so since 2020, and now banning it all of a sudden didn't really make sense to me. It's kind of weird. What I really loved, though, was the fact that Wildfire was unbanned. 9 mana spell that exiles all permanents, all cards from all hands and graveyards, and each player's life total becomes 1. This is the stuff that should be played in EDH, not only in cEDH, but in EDH in general. This is just fun for me. This is just fun in my opinion. So you have a 9 mana spell that just sets the game to 0. Everybody has 1 life, and the next person to successfully deal 1 damage. to their opponents wins the game. That's reasonable. It's a 9-mana spell. It's a reasonable card, just as Biorhythm, in my opinion. An 8-mana spell that makes everyone's life total become the number of creatures they control. Don't you think that's reasonable for an 8-mana sorcery? It's not even an instant, it's a sorcery, so it's easily disrupted. And yeah, this is the stuff I want to see unbanned. And yeah, well, they unbanned Worldfire, and I hope they will also unban Biorhythm and other cards like that. For example, Coalition Victory. I'm not a fan of you win the game cards, but banning Coalition Victory while also not banning Thassa's Oracle just makes no sense in my opinion. That's just like I could get enraged just from thinking about how stupid that is, how efficient Thassa's Oracle is as a win con, how inefficient Coalition Victory actually is. Well, yeah, that's the RC for you. What can I say? I'm not a member. I don't make the decisions. I just think they're stupid. Well, not the RC in general, but some of the decisions they make are like really stupid and make no sense in my opinion. Yeah, overall, it's just like how I said, I want a minimal ban list that only has the actually most busted cards like Yawgmoth Bargain, Grizzlebrand, Time Vault, Time Walk, Ancestral Recall, Power 9, not even Time Twister, but the rest, and ban those. Okay, that makes sense in my opinion. But banning card because it's pretty good and people are not able to play it properly, like Hull Breacher, that just makes no sense in my opinion. Just EDH is supposed to be fun. Make people talk. Make people sit together and have a talk about the game they just had or the game they're going to have, and adapt based on that. And if you see cards not working out properly, my opponents aren't having fun, my partners, because like EDH, you have partners you play with, right? Of course, they're your opponents, but like you sit there and you play to have fun and talk about them. Reflect that. Is that fun? Was that fun for you guys? Was that fun for me? Was it? Yes, I will keep playing that card. Was it fun for you? No, well, maybe I can't keep playing that card. But yeah, well, enough of that. Let's continue with the meta shift that kind of occurred in the last year. So yeah, after after Flash was banned, Adnos kind of took over. So everybody and their mother played Adnos decks, Turbonos decks. The meta was kind of dominated by TNT and later Blue Farm, but especially after Thassa's Oracle was released, Turbonos really became the degenerate inbred archetype it is right now, especially with Cody being a thing now. And yeah, Thassa's Oracle is one of those cards I think is really not fun to play against, really hard to interact with, and really way too compact as a combo win con with Demonic Consultation and Pact of Negation, not Pact of Pact of whatever, the other one. And this is a card I think could be or should be banned because it's just way too good and way too hard to interact with. But well, enough about bannings. Let's talk about the meta shift. So yeah, after Flash was banned, Adnos became the new big thing. Became even more degenerate after Thassa's Oracle was printed, and then kind of had its pinnacle, found its pinnacle with Cody. And yeah, well, what happened? People thought about how can I stop this? How can I disrupt this? And Rule of Law came into mind. Rule of Law became, especially Rule of Law based stacks that have a lot of white cards like Rule of Law, Deafening Silence, Archon of Emeria, and even more hate bears became like really big. And playing in a Rule of Law meta that doesn't have games end on turn 2 like every second game is really fun and made cEDH much more interesting after a period of just losing every second game on turn 2. I'm really happy to see more stacksy decks, more grindy decks, and yeah, it also puts Urza, my main deck, in a much better spot in the meta. Although I just recently built a Turbonauts list with Roger Tevesh. I'm still happy to see Rule of Law. Not especially when I play that deck, but just in general, I think it makes for a much more healthy cEDH environment, and I'm really happy that it's not about who can assemble Thassa's Oracle plus Demonic Consultation the fastest anymore. Yeah, just I think really healthy for the cEDH meta in general, for the overall meta. Yeah, and then with that, I think we come to what I expect for the next, for this year. So the release calendar says that the next sets to be released are Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. I'm really looking forward to that set, especially because I remember playing Kamigawa Standard. Yes, I've played Magic back then. I had a Samurai deck, I had a Ninja deck. I was still very young back then, but I think I settled for a mono blue control deck that had, I think the card is called Threats of Disloyalty and Kami of the Crescent Moon, which were kind of like the main cards in the deck. And then we also had Umezawa's Jite, really strong busted cards, one of the best equipments to ever been printed. And I'm really looking forward to more Kamis. I really like them. I'm looking forward to see cool artworks. I like the neon cyberpunk aesthetic. Yeah, looking forward to that set especially. Then we have Streets of New Capena, I think it is, kind of like a mob-themed set, I think. I don't know what to expect from that. I hope we see more, something like the guild structure we had in Ravnica, maybe something like that. That would be interesting. Hopefully some good new commanders. It's always kind of hard with those standard legal sets. They're not as busted as the modern legal ones. Yeah. We also get Unfinity. I'm not a huge fan of the unsets. I like the artworks for the lands that were spoiled. And I also like Sawnhath. Was actually the reason I decided to start building Roger Tevesh. I'm not sure I'm going to play it in that list anymore, but really interesting card. And I like the concept of not having those cards gray-boarded anymore, but like deciding if a card can be played in regular sets based on the hologram on the bottom. That's a good concept, I think. Not a huge fan of white-bordered, gray-bordered, gold-bordered cards in general. Don't like the aesthetics of them, but that's not so relevant. Yeah, and then we have Double Masters. Especially looking forward to that set because just like with Modern Horizons, these sets tend to have more busted cards in general. So looking forward to that set. We have Dominaria United coming in the third quarter this year. Yeah, neighbors making noise. I don't know, I think that's my son actually upstairs. Yeah, Dominaria United. I'm a huge fan of Dominaria as a plane. Of course, not only because I play Urza, but I've read some of the lore, and yeah, well, it's the center of MTG storytelling. I'm really glad we go back to it. I expect some powerful Planeswalkers, some powerful legendary cards, some good new commanders. But the set I'm looking forward to the most, of course, is the Brothers' War in the fourth quarter later this year. Yeah, I just reread the Brothers' War novel and also the Thran novel. I'm a huge fan of Urza, of course, and of the whole story behind the Phyrexians, especially like from the Thran up until Mirrodin. I guess that's what I, well, not grew up with, but that's the first MTG lore I had contact with when I was young. I main Urza. Currently actually reading the Planeswalker novel. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to get some new tutors or maybe a playable Mishra and maybe a new Urza, maybe Urza Planeswalker. Well, because like at the end of the Brothers' War, he actually became a Planeswalker. And but what I hope for the most is a new mana rock that we can play in Urza. So, like anything that's a good mana positive rock that could kind of replace Everflowing Chalice or it's called Jeweled Amulet. That would be really nice. And oh yeah, we also have the special sets, the what are they, Secret Layers or something like that. Warhammer 40k, Street Fighter, and Fortnite. So Fortnite I'm not a fan of. I don't think it fits MTG, but whatever, you can't do anything about it. Same with Street Fighter. I played that when I was young, but also don't think it fits MTG. But it's okay for me. I like the concept that they're making like an alternate artwork, but then also releasing a standard legal card with a in-universe artwork that works, in my opinion. It's okay for people that just want to have another artwork. But what I'm really looking forward to is Warhammer 40k. So I've never actually played Warhammer 40k myself, but I watch Warhammer 40k gameplay on YouTube. And I also am interested in the lore. Like at the moment, I listen to a bunch of YouTubers who make lore videos on Warhammer 40k, and I've decided to get into reading Warhammer once I'm finished with all the Urza lore. I still want to read or reread, which will probably take like the whole year. So around next year, I will start actually reading Warhammer 40k. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's what's coming up for the next year, and yeah, it's gonna be exciting, especially towards the end of the year. And with that, I think we come to an end today. So, well, if you liked listening to me talk about Magic for an hour, please consider subscribing. Leave a comment in the comment section, especially about the cards you think were the best and about the sets you're looking forward to this year. Share the video with your friends and give me your feedback on it. I'm trying to film a video every 2 weeks or so. I was actually planning on doing this video much earlier, but I was sick the last week. I'm still not back to health completely. But yeah, a video like every 2 weeks is definitely possible, considering that I have a full-time job as a teacher and also a family I have to take care of and spend time with. So yeah, with that being said, again, thanks for listening and have a wonderful day. See you guys on Discord.